So, good afternoon to our Inspire Answers radio listeners. Today on Inspiring Talks with Alarm, we have part four of our dealing with trauma on the Cape Flats with our counselor and expert, that is Nadia Tony Jacobs. Welcome to Inspire Answers radio.
Thank you, Ilam. Nice to be back.
Yes, you're back. Um, So this week we're dealing with domestic violence and generational abuse. And we need to focus on how to kind of break the cycle of abuse. So if you can just start us off with what would you deem as what is generational abuse?
First of all, the word abuse itself is widely spread because it pertains to quite a few different things. Um, I think we probably just dealing with the physical, the emotional, financial abuse that we have. And that is basically with the physical abuse, it's basically violence, cruelty. Some people refer to it as domestic violence, and the intentional harm towards somebody. Emotional abuse is when you gaslighting somebody, um, they degrade you, they devalue you. That is more emotional abuse, where you actually end up questioning yourself and feeling like you crazy, or you questioning yourself. And then financial abuse is um, holding power over the victim when it comes to assets or the person's wages or anything monetary. Is also a part of emotional abuse, because it's also degradation and so on.
Mm,
So that's the division between the three of them currently.
mm. So say you identify that you are being abused. What are some of the immediate steps that you can take to ensure your safety and if you have children, the safety of your children?
So I think what is important is, and I think we um, need to the at first and priority is to find support. Um, Most people that goes through any form of violence, they are not alone, but the emotions, it makes you feel like you're alone. So I think the very first step is to have a support system, all right? And that may look like your best friend, your favorite cousin, your best aunt, whoever it may be. You don't need a huge support system, but you need somebody that will support you in going through your journey. You can then, if you have gone through some form of abuse, you can then go to SAPS. And here we it's questionable because our people are so fed up with SAPS, and the injustices that they have to go through. So if anybody is abusing you, you can go and lay a charge. And my advice here is, if somebody says to you in the charge office, we don't have a detective available, and the family crime unit is not available, go to someone higher. Always remember, in the police system, there's somebody higher to go to. You're not destitute, you know. So SAPS, and then you can go out and get a protection order at the magistrate's court. So wherever you are living, your nearest magistrate's court, I think on this side it will probably be like Weinberg. You go, you get yourself a protection order. They deliver the partner's protection order of the call to appear in court, and yeah, so that will the judge then decides whether you are granted a protection order or not. Um, if it's a life-threatening alarm, um, and various people deem life-threatening situations differently.
Mm,
With regards to violence, if he smacked you one time too many, or if he used a weapon on you, and remember, our bodies are weapons.
mm,
Our bodies itself are weapons. So if you feel you need to get out, you don't know where to go to, there are places like Sarki Bartman. I've made a bit of a note with regards to Elsie's, and they are the nearest safe house is in Skier Island, which is nearest to Elsie's. Badisa, these different Badisa offices, they help with your children, and then Childline, the nearest to that will probably be Para. And then if you're looking at you're going to be running for the night, things has now gotten so bad and you just need to get out. You don't take your clothes, you grab your children and run. There is an overnight shelter called Elam. And I think that's also in Elsie's River.
mm,
So that is what you can do, you know. Running for the night is dicey, but while you are at the shelter, they can assist you with a counselor or a social worker or FCS. So things can be put into action. All you need to do is not give up.
not give up. Nadia, so generational abuse isn't like normal abuse where you step in and you're kind of getting abused and then you can escape. Generational abuse is where maybe your great grandfather treated your great grandmother like that, and so your grandfather treated your grandmother like that, and like your
Yes.
father treating your mother like that, and it is a
Yeah.
passed on behavior. So
Yes.
it's kind of entrenched in the bloodline almost. I want to say the bloodline, but how do you manage that? Because uh, if you go somewhere and say you go to a shelter, then they always kind of encourage you to go, not go back to your family, but to go back and reconcile and to kind of build your relationship again. But generational
Mm.
abuse is like, I'm not, can you like explain to people that how to get out of such a situation? Because it's kind of like you really have to start over. You have to start over
Yeah.
within you. You have to break habits that you think is normal because that isn't how like maybe the rest of us treats each other, but that is how for you that's normal. So like
Yeah.
how do you deal with that?
So, first of all, generational abuse is like a vortex. Whatever goes in must come out. Um, if you have been taking in violence all the time,
Mm,
then your children, as your children grow, they're going to see that, and obviously, it will come out in their behavior. Now, let's look at, say, it's male to female, because we do have females to male as well. Um,
mm,
and if it's male to female, the male child will be more exposed and he will also develop tendencies that will come out in the behavior. And sometimes it doesn't come out immediately. It will look like a passive aggressive child. And later in life, in the 20s, possibly or 30s, when they take a partner, that's when the behavior starts coming out and it just starts all up again. For the female believes that she deserves a partner like that. You know, so it's not just the abuse, it's the fact that it becomes part of your belief system. And to get out of that, you first need to recognize that you're actually sitting in a cycle. Once you recognize the emotions linked to that, then you can go and you can go for help. But like anything else that you learn, this in particular, you have to unlearn and then relearn again, you know, um, because then you are breaking the cycle. And children have a natural built-in, we as humans have a natural built-in copycat system. So, um, if the child sees it, he's going to learn and he's going to behave like it, he or she. And if you make the changes, automatically the interpersonal relationships starts making the changes because they will start copying that. So essentially, you're not just making changes for you, you're making changes in your relationships around you. And as you get stronger, the negatives start falling by the wayside.
Mm. Nadia, can you give an example of like how to break a habit? Like just like a simple example.
Okay. So let's say that let's say your husband comes home. I'm sorry, I always use the male figure because it's so dominant in our country. Um, let's say the male comes home for the night and he's been drinking,
Mm.
okay? Um, and so he asks you for money, wants to go out drinking some more, you say no, he smacks you. And so this happens on a weekly basis. At first, it will be um, a smack now and again. Then the time periods between that becomes shorter and shorter. Eventually, it becomes a regular occurrence. So there, what can you do? Once you have recognized you are sitting in the cycle, you then, start educating yourself. What can I do? Because it's only through education, if you learn why you have the feelings you are sitting with, then you are able to make the changes. And believe me, Ilam, and if I can just share something about myself, because all women goes through different things. I had a partner I was engaged to. And he was the model citizen. Today, somewhere he's an HOD in WCD's department. He teaches. And this man used to torture me. He used to lock me into a room
Well, what?
and, he used to lock me into a room. When he got out, when he got home, he would open the door. I wouldn't dare put my foot out by that door. I was too scared. So you sit with fear, anger, all of those things. It's not just one set of emotions. And something needs to shift. In the mind, something needs to shift. And that is where the change happens. I tolerated this form of torture, loads of other things that went on behind closed doors.
Mm.
Um, and what the thought I have was, if I tell anybody, they're not going to believe me because who believes in torture in this day and age? Who believes a man is going to walk around, switch off all the lights, rattle stuff? And you start questioning, am I going crazy? What the heck is going on? So that drove me to educate myself. And one day the shift happened. I found me a counselor in the quiet. It was a male, actually. So I challenged myself to that. And I said to him the one day, this man, it reminds me of my father. And his question to me, he said to me, would you marry your father? And I said, no. And that was the light switch.
Mm.
Okay. And that's where I made the decision. It's got to be the emphasis must be on education and change within yourself. You have to be able to take responsibility and accountability for your feelings, no matter who did what. to you, you sitting with those emotions. So that is where the change needs to happen, Ilham. And that is an example. And once I started learning, I became greedy for knowledge. And in going through my healing journey, I could offer that to other people, to other women that was also going through it. And that is where change happens, but it's
Mm.
not overnight. And
Mm.
that's what we need to understand.
Yes, I think we do need to understand that things will not change overnight. It is a process, and healing is a process. So, say now you're in an abusive situation, what are the long-term psychological effects? What happens to
So,
you growing up in an abusive environment?
so you can go through PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm.
There are a few other mental disorders that you can go through, like depression, manic depression, anxiety disorder, and there are different phases in anxiety disorders from the mildest to the most severe. Um, then we have BPD, borderline personality disorder, where you go through a few different um, abuses. When you go through a few different disorders and you've reached the point where it
Mm.
becomes, where it affects your personality. Um, I don't want to use the term bipolar because it's not the same thing as borderline personality disorder, but you can even go land in that situation because of PTSD. But there, Ilham, it is imperative that the person doesn't self diagnose because most disorders is not something everybody can recognize. A professional is the one that needs to monitor, recognize, and guide you in the way you should be guided because you may even need medication to assist you, you
Mm.
know. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so say you come from a family where this generational abuse occurs. How do
Mm.
you, what, I mean, this is your specialty with the healing and how do you heal from the past trauma and how do you prevent? Because I think this is the key thing, like how do you prevent those behaviors? Because I mean, it's almost like a default behavior because it's been put in you since you were a child. That is how they treat each other. So how do you stop it? And how do you make sure that your current and future relationships won't get affected by this and your children? Like afterwards, like how do you ensure that you don't pass it on?
So, it is not an illness that you can pass on. It's a decision-making process. That's the first thing. Because sometimes you have, and because everybody's situation differ, um, two relationships could be going through exactly the same thing, but because people differ from each other, their thought processes, their emotions, all of that
Mm.
is going to change. I think the most important thing that we need to take cognizance of is that the cycle, first of all, needs to be broken. You also need to look at what are your safety mechanisms. How do I create a safe environment for myself and my children so that we can move on from it? We also, once we are set up with a counselor um, or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, we need to make specific or ask specific questions. What is my timeline? How long do you think I'm going to need to develop my strengths? and to ensure that I don't go back again. So here's the thing, Ilam. Most of us that goes through any form of abuse, sometimes we go back to where we were because it was comfortable. It became
Mm.
comfortable. I became desensitized. You become desensitized to the whole situation. So it just becomes norm. Um, and we have to recognize that this actually isn't the norm. So, how do we move past that? We do not look like, for me, as a counselor, I can create a timeline for a client, but I don't want the client to create a timeline because they oftentimes feel forced to heal in a certain time, and we cannot put a time frame on healing. Healing is a lifelong thing. Remember, just like a scar we have, if we cut ourselves, we sit with emotional scars as well. It doesn't go away. But if your practice becomes repetition, just like the beatings became a repetition, the healing must now become a repetition. Only then are we able to get the strength we need to move on. um, Also recognizing, um, you know, you can also make your partner attend classes or, uh, um, get his counseling so that there's a possibility of rehabilitation. That does not mean that the relationship must stay. I would advise against it. But if the person or both partners are willing to work through it together, we cannot change their minds for them. We cannot say to them, it's the wrong thing that you're doing. Um, but if a year passes on and he started doing the same thing again, the chances of him going back there constantly is still going to be repetitive, you know. Yeah, I hope I answered that question correctly. Um, but yeah, there's just so much, Ilam, that one can say when it comes to healing. But it is actually, the bottom line is a practice. That's the bottom line. And you need to be able to help yourself. Um, like oftentimes I also when I speak to people, I take them into, when I start off with them, I use my this special framework I think I discussed previously with you, that I do. And that is inclusive of mind mapping, timeline, treatment, psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, mindfulness, and homework.
Mm.
So I don't just sit there and say, okay, so how are you feeling today? We're going to hit to your feelings, but you need to put in the work.
Mm.
That's the type of counseling I do. So the practice and your timeline becomes a little bit easier.
Mm. Yes, because Nadia, you have to want to change. You can't force someone to change. I think that is also very important to remember is that, the old saying, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. Like it has to come from within. And
That's,
even if you
yeah,
force somebody to go to therapy, because you're identifying these things as an outsider or as a partner, for example, if they don't want to change, then they're not going to change. Like it must come from within. So going
yeah,
on to our next question, so now you identify that there is some kind of abuse within your family, and you can see within the history that it's there, it's being like the behavior is being passed on, like they're copying each other. Um, so
yeah.
how do you address this without causing conflict? Because I mean, it's a very sensitive topic
Um,
if you accuse somebody of abuse or if you like confront them, because most abusers deny it. Like they will be like, "No, I never did that." Like it's a big denial thing. So like, how do you start that conversation?
So generally, somebody would approach me and ask me if I do marriage counseling. I say yes, and we set up an appointment. In that first appointment, we obviously do the history of both uh, persons or both clients. We do the history of each one. Um, Before all of that, I say to them, this is what I can give you. This is the framework. This is how I utilize it within the counseling. But I cannot use that if you are not honest with me. So
Mm.
we are going to have an honest relationship with boundaries and goal settings in place. So I make myself very clear at the beginning of the situation. Now, remember, we might have um, the abused woman and then we have the abuser.
Mm.
So your words needs to be groomed very well because you don't want to lie to anybody. You don't want to mislead anybody, and you need to have the greatest respect for both parties. Um, And generally, I must say, I haven't, touch wood, I haven't had anybody come and go off at me or because I've given them the space. So even the abuser probably has been abused.
Mm.
Um, and he's had learned behavior. It doesn't mean that he can't create the change. So we have to acknowledge that as well, and I think that is what wins over our form of counseling because I acknowledge that within both the clients. And there's been times where I've had men say, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm leaving, and I would generally get up and say, okay, would you like 5 minutes away? Just calm down, let's move outside, get a breath of fresh air, and then talk to me. Tell me what is bugging you. So I give them that space as well. It's not very easy because, it's easy for us to blame and say, he's the violent one. It's easy for us to say, but he abused me. How can you take his side? There's no sides here. I tell them that there's no sides and there's no right or wrong. It's the action that we need to speak about. So, because also, if you're in somebody's face and you tell them, um, if you're in someone's face and you tell them, you're this person, you're that person, so you have to be able to really groom your words well. And so far, in my 30 years that I've done counseling, I haven't had somebody come back yet
Mm.
and said they felt bad. But like I say, they get homework, they've got to work on little projects together. They got to find themselves again, you know. And if it doesn't work, make sure you tell each other. If you are leaving each other, make sure you're not angry. Because if you're still angry and you've left the home, then you have unfinished business,
Mm.
you
I
know.
think within
So,
the
yeah.
family setting, Nadia, um, it's a very emotional thing, and especially if people can trigger each other, they get highly emotional. So, do you recommend, like, in the beginning, do you recommend family counseling first or individual counseling? And like, let us talk about the counseling process. Just briefly, how these sessions look like for somebody that's now never done anything, never gone to a psychologist, never gone for social work. How does it look, and like, how does it feel, and like, just to kind of encourage them to go seek help if this is
Yeah.
happening.
Okay. So first of all, sorry, your first question was
Should
regarding.
the family like do family counseling first, or should they like do individual counseling?
So it depends on the needs, Ilam. It depends on how the abuse has filtered through the family and where they are emotionally. It depends on the weight that they're carrying, how they're dealing with it, or if they have started dealing with it. So everybody is different, and each family holds their own set of values or um, yeah, basic values and morals. And so some people don't, they've already been devalued, or one has one type of timeline, the other one has different needs. So depending on the needs, if it's something like, let's say, um, father shot the mother and it's left her paralyzed. Okay, and they've never even treated it with counselors or psychologists, etc. Um, a shooting is a vicious crime.
Mm,
It's cruel and it's vicious, and so you don't know what is happening with the children or how it impacted on them. Because remember, the mom is the major, she's the maternal nurturer
mm,
of the family. And most times, dads are the disciplinarian, which is not always, but most times. Um, so, with regards to that, I think with debriefing, when we do the history of the clients or the families, in that session, you as a counselor would need to ask certain questions to determine how you're going to move forward and with whom you're going to move forward. So if it's a family situation, I would think if I'm seeing the wife, I would then say, right, we're going to refer you to FAMSA because then you will get overall counseling there because we cannot duplicate the system. Um, our teachings as counselors it varies sometimes. So I will then refer them out, and wife can keep her counseling with me. If she feels a couple of months down the line, I would like my husband to be a part of this, then I welcome that. But I would then monitor the family as a whole. And then with regards to my framework, so I have what I call a three-dimensional portal process. It is, I formulated this about 10 years ago. It's really an ironclad process, but I created it with the emphasis on children mostly at school. However, I use it with my clients as well, my adults. Um, so in the first part of triangulation, you would have, if you're talking about school, the role players would be the child, the parents, and the teacher, and I'm the middle point. I'm the intervention process, right? Um, if it's clients coming on their own, the same applies. Then I would do the history of all the role players, in this case, male, female. I do the history with them. Um, and things like drugs, alcohol, fetal alcohol syndrome, children, was the drugs while you were pregnant, etc. So I get a firm outlook on um, your background because your background will determine um, the next form of therapy, which would be your psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is based on talk therapy. In your first session, you would have started debriefing the clients. What made you come to me? Why are you here? What brings you here today? Oftentimes you find that we call it in psychology, we call it Berberia. Generally, that's verbal diarrhea. So um, sometimes you find that they are so overwhelmed that they just overflow, and you allow them that space. That is part of the debriefing. So the second part is psychotherapy, where we now discuss what are your feelings, why do you think you're sitting with that, how does it relate to your everyday work or home or family life? What do you think you can put in place? So we do, and I love this part of therapy because it gives me an insight to what the patterns are of the person. And also when I reiterate it back to them, then it makes them think. So this is why I love this part of it, because the intention that I want to have here with the client is to open up their minds to change, and it must come from them. So once I have that to work with, once they tell me I'm wanting to start changing, then we start working on the third part of the framework, which is the final part of it. Here, we create an analytical assessment. So if the child needs to go to the doctor, or the adult person needs to go to a doctor, psychiatrist, etc., I will create an analytical assessment. I put everything into
Audio, we're
into
running
the
out of time. We're running out of
oh,
time.
sorry.
But
Yes,
thank you so
so
much. We're talking about generational abuse. Thank you so much, Nadia Tony Jacobs. Next week we'll be talking about crime within schools and how this affects learned behavior and how it can lead into gangsterism and how it affects our families and our communities.